We are now going to continue with similar themes, but we talk about drinks and bars in Berlin mostly. What makes for an authentic bar and drink experience here in Berlin, and what does the future look like, and what should we learn from the past? I'm joined by three panelists here on stage. Maria Gorbatschova is a bar manager and head bartender at the Green Door bar in Schöneberg. It's one of the oldest bars of its kind in Germany, I understand.
Definitely in Berlin. It was opened 95, and for Berlin, it's pretty old for a classic cocktail bar because cocktails don't have that much of a rich history in Germany compared to the US or Britain.
You also do loads of other work with the drink industry. Can you tell me about that?
Sorry?
You also do other work with drinks.
Yeah, right. I do consulting work. I also do product development for companies. I make pop-up events. I write for Mixology magazine. So there's a lot of things I do besides.
Next to you, we have Arnd Heißen from Frederick's bar, which is almost next door. Welcome to the stage.
Thanks
for those audience members who haven't been to your place, which seems unlikely. Do you want to tell us about the concept of Frederick's? It's got a long history as well, in a way. The concept of Frederick's.
Oh, basically, it's an amazing building because it used to be a hotel in 1906. Was built by the German emperor and has a lot of history. The rooms are today they're not there anymore, but we have built a restaurant and bar in the former lobby of the Esplanade Hotel, and
a very beautiful venue. I visited it yesterday. Also, we're joined by Carina Soto-Velasquez, co-founder of Quitoxic Projects restaurant group in Paris, and you are nowadays based in London. In your own words, do you want to try to define what you do? There's so much going on over there.
So I'm also a bartender. I started bartending in the early 2000s and opened my first venue in Paris in 2011. And in the past 12 years have opened a series of 5 different venues. And today we have 2 signature brands, that is Le Marie Celeste and Candelaria. They are heavily cocktail focused, but also have food, wine, and different programs. We also do consultancy. We have a bar in New Orleans called Bar Marilou with the group of the Ace Hotel brand, and that we keep the concept alive. We have done well the whole thing. And I have also a very small distillate project in Oaxaca in Mexico. So originally I'm Colombian, but I've been working with Mexico for now around 14 years. And so I have a small distillate, fruit distillates and agave distillate project.
Thank you for joining us today. Shall we start with what I think is a controversial claim I heard from you, Arnd? You said to me the other day that you think the best times of Berlin's bar scene were about 10 years ago. Do you want to explain that?
Okay, this always sounds so negative. You know, I was actually saying in every point of time, there's always something very positive and something very negative, or not, or just a little bit negative. And 10 years ago, I would say the quality of drinks in this city have not been the same standard like today. But one thing that has always been amazing, that has been the Kneipenkultur, you know, like nice, cozy bars. And I think being down to earth and not taking ourselves too much seriously, being a little bit clumsy, it's always a positive thing about this city. And like 10 years ago, when the quality was not so high, that was more in the focus. And then really, really good quality was joined to that, and then it was a really, really good cocktail culture.
I'm wondering, Carina, obviously you don't live in Berlin, but you have been, as you mentioned, you've been working on a bar in New Orleans, you live in London, you have businesses in Paris. How do you see Berlin? How do you place Berlin on the world map when it comes to its bar culture?
So what is interesting with Berlin is that it's been an inspiration for me in my work, actually for a long time. I feel that something that makes the bar scene and the nightlife of Berlin very unique is that it's very underground. You need to know certain people. Some people let you in, some other don't. So it has his own ecosystem that if you manage to get in, you will discover the most amazing places. So something very interesting and is a juxtaposition on the bar scene is that Berlin has the biggest bar show in Europe. BCB, Bar Covent Berlin, is enormous. Any bartender that cares about the profession has been coming to BCB for the last 10 years, hands down, at least once or twice a year. So we know the Berlin bars. But if you look at international recognition, people don't talk about Berlin bars that much. There is like a secret. There is something, and when I come here, I love going to certain bars that I know some locals know, but a person from outside will not particularly know, like a random tourist will not particularly know. So it is very interesting to see as a bar scene because it's inspiring, it's contemporary, there's constantly new places that are amazing, there's old school places that have maintained the business and the cocktail industry alive, Green Door, Steigerli, I was talking about Back on Break, Immetroid that I adore. So there is some really legendary places here. And then you have bars like Velvet Room that I've met recently that I love what they're doing and it's more modern and it's a definitely more contemporary take on. I know Arnd actually for a long time too. And what he's been doing in the history of cocktails of Berlin has been extremely relevant and important. I don't know how many bartenders you have trained, but I know there's a lot. So it is a very exciting scene. I think for Germany it's a very important scene, but internationally, somehow we don't see them that much.
Are you suggesting that Berliners want to kind of keep these places to themselves and are not simply promoting them enough?
It feels that it's part of the style of the nightlife. It needs to keep this underground thing because then it's not Berlin anymore. I don't know how to say it, but it's really that. There is and I know owners of some of the bars I mentioned before, they their number one priority is that the locals love it. And they see their bar as a neighborhood bar before anything else, not a tourist attraction, not for bartenders from outside to come and copycat or to give their critics or whatever. They don't care. They don't care about Tales of the Cocktails in New Orleans or it was 50 best. So they don't care about these things. They care about their product being very solid for the locals. And I admire that. I mean, I find that fascinating.
Maria, what are your thoughts about this?
When I came to the city 15 years ago, it was not very cool to spend a lot of money on drinks. It was more like, hey, I take you to this place, you can get a beer for €2 and a wine for €3.50. And it was a little bit more this, you know. Berlin has always been more a place to escape for artists who don't have much money, you know, for a lot of young people. So every place you go to, clubs, it's more cheap drinking, you know. Berliners love to drink, but it was never that fancy. And I think now to go out and spend €15 on one cocktail, that's something that is new for the city and people have to get used to that.
Do you think we lost something along the way? As Arnd was suggesting in the beginning, he thought there was something special going on about 10, 15 years ago. Do you miss those times yourself?
I mean, of course, I was 20, it was a great time. It was a very fun time, but at the same time, I have to say, how the bars were managed were not always great. People were not paying taxes because the only way you can sell a beer for €2 is if you don't pay your employees very well and you don't pay taxes. You know, and this is not a great thing, to be honest. So I feel like maybe to professionalize, if we want to get really good people to work in the industry, and right now that's what we're missing, people, like new people coming to the industry, that's what everyone is complaining about in all the bars. We need to also be professional and offer them good working environment and not like it was in the past, you would start a shift maybe at 6 in the evening and you would go out there 8 in the morning, you know? So it was very normal to overwork. It was, you know, I think there are a lot of things I miss about the time, but from a professional point of view, I think we are going to a better direction.
Probably. I remember coming to Berlin from Finland some 15, 20 years ago, and I remember that. I remember seeing some of the most knackered, tired-looking bartenders in some bars over here at 5 o'clock in the morning. I think it was Arnd who was concerned during the break that we have been too negative about the Berlin public. I think we should emphasize the aspect we actually did mention already in the previous discussion, which is that actually Berliners are quite curious and they want to try different things. What do you think about that, Arnd? About the Berlin audience and customers you get in the bars? What do they want?
Actually, I want to add something to what Carina said. Some people call it freedom. I would say here in Berlin, it's the art of not giving a shit. So basically, when you enter a bar and you have the feeling that everything is possible, and you see the tools and you see like arts or whatever inside the bar or inside the restaurant that give you the feeling this is going to be a very special night you have never felt before, then it's a nice place. And what we have been talking about is the guests, they make the atmosphere of the venue. So if you have a nice mixed crowd, that's why I'm sometimes a little bit concerned about the prices, the pricing of food and drinks. You were talking about very expensive food before. If you put the prices up all the time, you are missing out on a lot of guests. Then you only have one category of guests, which is not the same mix like it used to be. So that's one thing we should always take in consideration, that we have a wide offering for our guests, so that everybody can mix and we have a great crowd. Because when you enter the place and you have a great atmosphere, it's because of the guests and the staff together.
How do you encourage the right mixture of people? What do you do, for example, in your bar?
Basically, you have to have a clear concept, I would call it like a religion that you stick to, and the guests, they need to understand it. Of course, subconsciously, you don't pray it like a mantra. The guests, they dive in, they experience it, and they experience it with fun. And then you have guests that are laughing, the guests are smiling, the guests that are loud. If you turn up the volume by half, or turn down the volume after all the guests are gone, then you know it has been a great night.
Carina and Maria, you have been consulting businesses. How much focus is there ever about getting the right mix of people in these places? How much is that discussed? Can you offer some advice for bars how to create a place where, as Arnd described it, you go in there and you feel like anything could happen tonight? How do you create that vibe?
So I think it depends on what you're doing. And it depends on the neighborhood you're in and on the product. I mean, in the 5 venues I opened in Paris in the last 12 years, none of them looked like each other. They were all very different and diverse in concepts, in areas, and in product. So I used to own a dive bar, for example, in the Pigalle district, open until 5 in the morning, 7 days a week. Where actually towards the years it became the party bar of all my staff and every person in the industry in Paris will go and celebrate going away parties and stuff, and it was a great place to have, but never actually made money. It was the most glorified bar, but never made money. Like, it wasn't financial viable. So of course, it will invite a lot of people. It was very, the product was there for everything, but it never, we never managed to balance it out. So we have to sell it after 7 years. I mean, it lived 7 years, great, but we have to sell it. Then we did a restaurant, a very big restaurant inside the Contemporary Art Museum in Paris called Le Palais de Tokyo. There was 170 covers with a very big bar where we focused the entire, food, I would say today is a redundancy to talk about sustainability or food waste. So of course that was a main core thing, but for the bar. So doing something like that, creating a concept so big, so difficult to implement in the bar side, like buying spirits in bulk, cutting ice from a giant block to don't waste water. I mean, the whole process of creating that was very difficult. And then you're in a museum where so many people come from so many backgrounds. You need to be able to cater the people that live in the area, plus the students that come, plus it's so difficult to cater absolutely everyone. So when you do consultancy, or even tomorrow if I want to open a venue, the study of the amount of diversity of people you can have, it needs to match the area where you are located, the size of your venue, and definitely the product you're doing. Price is definitely a thing. I think for cocktails, what I like of a bar is indeed the joy of having the drinks. When it becomes too fancy, to me, it's a very different experience. There's places that do it, they do it well. It's not me, for example. It doesn't go in my identity. I like bars that are more lively and people can afford. But I do like a good cocktail, and I do like good spirits, and we try to manage. It's a very delicate way of work it out, but you can. But then it depends on your identity, your authenticity, what you're bringing, no? Because that's how we work with the consultings when a client wants something. So.
I think also for us, because I have this experience of working 8 years now at the Green Door from 28 with bars existing. And so it's a very long-running concept, and it's really hard to get a bar running that long. So what I focus on is to create a team that works well together, that has good personalities, and that focuses on hospitality, because this is how you create an atmosphere where people actually want to be and want to return to. And because we are open that long, 28 years, we have a very diverse clientele. So you will have someone who met his wife there in 95, and then you will have 20-year-old kids trying cocktails for the first time. We are also in the oldest queer area probably in Europe, so you will have a lot of very diverse people who use the bar. Some is a dive bar, some is a place to get a fancy drink. So it's very important to keep all the customers and guests in mind when creating a concept, to have a wide range of prices also. I think it's good to always have a few cheap drinks on a menu, then some that are a little bit more fancy, so that people have some range to choose from. And then, yeah.
Maybe staying with you, Maria, I'm wondering about the concept of authenticity when it comes to bars and when it comes to drinks. When you work in a bar that's a bit of an institution with almost 30 years of history, what does authenticity mean in that context? Like, what is authentic to your bar, for example?
We changed the concept a lot, because how it was opened, it was 95. The style of drinking was from a different era. So it was tiki drinks mixed with American classics, mixed with just cream and blue curacao 90s drinks. It was a very big menu. Nowadays we do serve classics, but only if you ask for them. And we make some really good ones, I would say. But our menu is quite small. It's digital, so we can change the menu a lot. It's seasonal. We do some foraging. We do a lot of ingredients ourselves. And it focuses on products from Europe, because for me, taking over this bar and getting it there also was kind of difficult, because you have people, as I said, coming in who know the bar since 95, and they want their swimming pool or whatever drink we don't do anymore. So you have to deal with that. By the way, in general, I think bars, it's something they struggle with, that people coming to a bar, they expect every bar on the planet to do a whiskey sour, to do a pineapple drink, to do everything. So it's like when you go to a restaurant and you want a pizza, but also sushi and also a curry. No one expects that in a restaurant, but in a bar, I think this is something you have to deal with all the time, with this kind of unrealistic expectations that you have to do everything. So we don't do that anymore, and we took it slowly, kind of, and still try to offer some of the old classics if people ask for them, but also push people's palates towards something that we want to do. So stay authentic to the old idea, but at the same time create something that we really want to focus on.
Arnd, what are your thoughts about authenticity? for example, in the case of the bar you work at?
I have a couple of thoughts. Dalat, she was saying something very, very intelligent before about seeing the reality, like when she was talking about the Turkish food, because the way you want to operate is by listening also to your guest. Maria is doing a really, really nice kind of marketing at the Green Door, because, for example, she's working with an ice manufacturer close to her bar, and he's making delicious ice cream for the Green Door bar, which she's using in cocktails. And of course, then the guests from the Green Door are going to the ice cream place, the guests from the ice cream place are going to the Green Door bar. And, you know, good friends, bring good guests. It's the same, you know, basically we are all mammals, we are human beings, and I have not talked about our concept before, which I will now do a little bit.
Please.
We are doing cocktails based on perfumes, and if you can smell another person, if you like to smell another person, you like the other person. If you know the effect that a perfume has on you, it means that you know how the guest feels. So I think being authentic is knowing what the guest likes, and service will always make a difference.
Can you tell us more about this? What kind of perfumes are there, and can you give us examples of people choosing perfumes and then you figuring out what they want to have and how they feel?
Yeah, we have a box of perfumes. For example, Bal d'Afrique right now is the most popular one. And all perfumes have edible ingredients, otherwise it will be poisonous on your skin. And Bal d'Afrique is like an aviation cocktail. It's violet, it's cherry, it's lemon, bergamot, vanilla, and a little bit of musk. So we use the same ingredients that are inside the perfume. And then, if a person is choosing that perfume, I know that person is more, you know, like once they have a deep conversation, is relaxed, you know, because based on the aromatherapy of that drink. So for me, that's authentic, and in that way, I can feel how the guest wants to feel that way, and then I can, you know, empathize more with the guest.
Shall we talk about what's happening in the world of bars and drinks when it comes to trends? Maria, you mentioned already that your bar, for example, has been changing its offerings over the years. What do you think is the trend of 2023 or maybe even 24 and 5 in drinks and in bars?
I think it depends where you are. I think there are a lot of micro trends everywhere, all over the world, and it depends on the markets. But I think in general, what personally I am interested in, and more bar goers interested in, is to feel the same as in the kitchen right now. For example, Nobelhart Schmutzig, this restaurant, is only possible in Berlin because it works with ingredients around Berlin. And I feel like this is also something that will become more important in the bar scene, because right now, as I said, people want just to drink their whiskey sour everywhere, but I think it will be just more interesting if bars offer more specialized concepts with specialized ingredients, maybe drinks that play with different cultures, or for example with scents, like what Arnd is doing, so that they are more recognizable, they are more special. I think this is something that will happen more.
Yeah, I mean, I join you on that, and I think what I see the most nowadays in bars is the layouts as well, and the way. Right now, when you go to a cocktail bar, you will see the beautiful transparent ice blocks that are cut to the size of the glassware. You see diversity in glassware. You see much more negative refrigeration than positive. You see more freezers, because your ice needs to be in the freezer, your glassware needs to be in the freezer. Today, to be a cocktail bar at a certain level, the whole layout of what cocktail bars used to be 10 years ago has completely changed. So that brings, of course, as a guest experience, when you're getting used to certain things, to have, like, I don't know, the logo of the bar in the ice inside your cocktail, or you get used to particularly services, how it looks, how it feels, it becomes a trend, in the sense that everybody needs to start to living out somehow to that. Bars, cocktail bars particularly, and that craft, or that knowing how, are evolving to a more definitely a culinary experience. I mean, right now we use so many techniques. We use even rotovapes that were used with chemical engineers and people that that demand actually a degree, but bartenders are using them. There is so much equipment today that are used by bartenders that had no training, that have been learning that on YouTube videos or on pioneers bartenders in bar shows. I mean, little by little, there's been more education on it, but it's unbelievable the amount of technology that now you can find in a cocktail bar.
Is that technology necessary?
It's a very good question. I think you can achieve amazing flavor without that giant investment, but I have to say that there's people that use it really well. London, for example. London is a bar scene that uses a lot, and they were pioneers on it. And some actors of that London bar scene know how to do it at excellence. Others, not yet, despite that.
What are some of the most curious gadgets you may come across in a cocktail bar nowadays? What kind of technology are we talking about?
I mean, for me, the rotovap is the one thing that I go crazy with, because it is a pharmaceutical. I mean, it's not like a bartender thing. I mean, you extract flavor at perfection, but it's a really difficult and very costly, expensive utensil. So as a bar owner, for me to get that machine, to take the space of my small bar, to get that machine, and on top of it, every time somebody breaks a piece, because they're extremely fragile, to replace it is expensive. So, and I think you can achieve flavor in so many other ways, but it is interesting that now that is a trend. Now, if you are a bar owner, you want to be in a certain, you have to think about getting all those materials that are very expensive. Mm-hmm. A sous vide machine is something also relatively new. Like now, a lot of infusions happen sous vide. I mean, my bartenders will not work if they don't have their sous vide machine. I'm like, come on, guys. I used to make cocktails before sous vide machines were part of the bar program. But it's becoming a real thing. Mm. So there is so many different techniques now for bartenders to extract flavor, but I mean, milk punch, that is an old one, and it's a very popular one nowadays. I don't see, right now you go to any cocktail bar, you will see a milk punch. You will see a yogurt or cream or milk-based cocktail, but it's transparent, crystal clear, and there is a whole infusion. So there is a lot of very cool techniques that our bars are implicating today to have flavor and distinct themselves. And they're becoming massive trends, yeah.
Arnd, we are in Berlin, and obviously this city has an amazing reputation, an amazing brand when it comes to nightlife and the nightlife economy. Many, many people from around the world have been coming here over the years to have a great time and stay out till late. Now that Berlin is getting more expensive and is changing, do you think we're losing something at the same time? Do you think there is a risk that Berlin could somehow suffer when prices get more expensive and the way of drinking and celebrating, going out is changing?
Actually, no, because the culture I was talking about before is still present, and I think a lot of bartenders that are working in high-class bars, they go to exactly those bars. They go to dive bars, and they enjoy their time. Actually, most of the Champions League bartenders, they never go or rarely go to Champions League bars.
Where do they go instead?
They go to Würge Engel or sometimes, Roses, it's like places in Kreuzberg, places where you completely dive into a completely different world. And the most important thing here in Berlin, why the gastronomy is so interesting, because the guests are very open-minded, very experimental. They want to constantly always experience new stuff, and that makes Berlin so much different than the rest of the world.
That's good to hear. Another thing that may be a concern for some entrepreneurs, there is a lot of talk about how people drink less alcohol. What do you think about that? Is it happening?
You want to take my theory? So my theory is not that people are drinking less. I just think that people that decide to either don't drink or take a break or drink a lower ABV are more open about it, and now the experience of it is completely normal. So a cocktail bar nowadays needs to have a low ABV and non-alcoholic program that is relevant, that is not just a lemonade. It needs to be part of the excellence of the rest of the drinks. And that being part of that, you can actually welcome more guests. Yeah, I think Berlin has always had very strong female actors in the bar scene. Really, really good ones and inspiring ones for that now are in in their middle 40s. I mean, I'm 38, but yeah, I would say that there's always been very strong female actresses here in Berlin. The bar scene in Paris has been slightly different, but also today quite a balance. I mean, I have not struggled either finding a woman to work in my kitchens or in my bars anymore, and I think it's also part of the changing of organization in the sense that you were talking about, more balance in the working hours, and also creating spaces that are slightly hardcore for work, because it's true that nothing good happens after 2 in the morning. Me owning that bar in Pigalle until 5, actually one of the head bartenders that I had there for a year and a half was Christina Schneider, like a legend here in the cocktail industry. She was amazing, but it was tough. So I think that creating also safer spaces have helped to have more women joining the bar force.
And what has the discussion been like where you have been working, or is gender balance discussed at all?
Basically, I think society has changed also, and if you look at before, like 20 or 30 years ago, there were a lot of discussions about if women are actually capable to carry boxes and stuff. Today, you have more arguments with men carrying down the boxes than with the women. The women just say, okay, I'm just gonna do it because otherwise I'm wasting my time. So basically, it's today everything is mixed much more. So it's all about are you motivated or not, and not if you're a man or woman. So basically, it's basically the background, how you're brought up, and not what kind of gender you have, right?
Carina, let's return to the topic of what Berlin does particularly well. Obviously, you know what's happening in bars around the world, and you have such a global take on things. What do you think the rest of the world, for example, London or Berlin or New York or New Orleans, should learn from Berlin?
That's a very good question, but I actually like the humbleness of the talented people that work in the Berlin bar scene. I like the fact that they're focused on their business and they're focused on their local people, and they're very humble on the amazing work they do. Sometimes I find certain bar scenes that can be very, very peacock, and I think I like that about the bar scene here. It's always a pleasure to come and see what bartenders are doing. I'm really excited. I hope I get to check Wax On tonight, because it's been on my list to check in for a while. And I know there's so many good bars that keep opening and creating conversation, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be amazed by that humbleness and good craft that has been done in the city.
You have your flight at 6 o'clock in the morning, I heard. I'm wondering, I don't know how you're going to be spending the rest of the evening, but if you are checking out some bars and if you're going to some of your old favorites, obviously we have already mentioned Green Door Bar and Frederick's as great places, but what else do you have in Berlin you enjoy?
My favorite dive bar is 8mm.
Oh my God, that's also my favorite bar.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it actually is. I'm not kidding. That's where
has
I
a
spent
stage.
a lot of time in my 20s.
Now you have to explain to me what happens over there. What's it like?
I mean, I discovered that bar a long time back in 2008 or something like that, and it's just a great dive bar. It's open late. The music is always on point. It has a stage, and sometimes they're projecting movies, and it's just the crowd that, for example, meets there and everything. It comes from anywhere. It's very, for me, it represents a lot the city. It has a very good identity. It's really cool.
And do you have favorite places elsewhere?
It depends on how the night went. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I went to Schlawinchen. You know that one?
Oh,
I think that's maybe
Legendary.
that's close to 8 millimeter, is it? No, I'm talking about the vibe. No?
8 millimeter is very rock and roll, I would say, and Schlavinchen is 24 hours open bar, and everyone comes there, from very, very different people. It's a crazy, crazy mix of people.
So
if you want
after
to see a really crowded bar on a Tuesday, 7 in the morning, go there. It's insane.
And of course, after work, you have a lot to talk about, so you need time. So you have to have 24 hours bar, right?
Just finally, before we go to audience questions, just final question, thinking about the future of Berlin. What would you like to see happen over here, or what would you like to see change in order to boost Berlin as a drink destination in the future? For example, Arnd, we started this panel by saying that you think Berlin's best bar days were 10 or 15 years ago, but what would it take to make Berlin that reference point for the rest of the world again?
May I start? The thing is, I think after Corona, a lot of teams, they need time to do some training, and actually we don't have to change a lot, because basically a lot of our guests are very knowledgeable because they have been concentrating on making drinks at home. They're very, I'm so proud of a lot of our guests that are coming to our place because they're extremely amazing. And right now, all we have to do is concentrate on training about spirit, about hospitality, about service, and always discussing about how everything is done, rather than changing things or bringing in new techniques and stuff, because there are a lot of really, really great stuff on the market, but concentrate on that. And then, because a lot of stuff has left the industry. So right now we have a lot of soil, but we have to put the seeds, and the seeds, they have to blossom, or actually grow first and then they blossom,
Thank you for that. Maria, what do you think?
I think that the hospitality culture has to become a little bit more warm, because Berlin is kind of, as Paris, well known for having very unfriendly service. I hope.
I think it's been changing, to be honest.
Yeah. I think so too. Also, a lot of bars. I know, for example, if you go to Velvet or Waxon, you will have very, very warm service. Or Fabelei is also really great in Schöneberg. There are a lot of bars that are changing that. So this I would like to see more, and then also I would love to see that people work more with small distilleries and small companies from Germany, because Germany has a very rich culture for distilleries, for very special local products. And right now a lot of bars are more focusing on just working with big brands, which I also do. It's nothing wrong with that, but I would see bars to support the local culture a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Carina, final thought about what you would like to see change in Berlin?
I mean, every time I come here, I see new stuff. So for me, it's a hard question because I don't live here, so I don't see what is the day-to-day of the bar industry. So it's difficult because at the same time I'm a little bit nostalgic on loving bars like 8 millimeters. So I don't. There are things, for example, 8 millimeters I don't want to change ever. So yeah, we'll just add service. Service indeed, because I feel there's extremely talented people doing amazing things in the plate, in the beverage, but sometimes it does get lost on service. Sometimes I finding head bartenders and bartenders so humbling in their work, so ready to share their recipes, so working so hard, and then the person that is serving you the drink doesn't even say hello, goodbye to you, doesn't ask you if you enjoy your drink. It's little details that you need today in service to really be at a certain level and to enjoy your experience differently. That thing is the one I will see improving. But
I'm going to hand over my responsibilities to our audience. I think it's time for audience questions now. So just raise your hands and we can start continuing with great questions. There is one great question on the right-hand side over here.
Sorry. I said, don't call it great just yet. It might not be a good question. I've been a bartender for the better part of 10 years as well. And I've noticed that over the years, actually, the making of individual cocktails has actually been close to what it takes to make a main course. So sometimes you wait 12, 13, 14, 15 minutes for a cocktail. Do you believe that it takes away from the customer experience to wait this long for a cocktail?
I think it does. I think people also becoming more and more impatient. Of course, if you order whiskey sour with egg white on a Saturday night, it's your fault, to be honest, because just don't order it. You know, I mean, there's just some drinks people need to understand. They're not coming from a bottle we just opened. We actually need time to prepare them. And if you order something that is takes a long time to, like, it will just take a long time because of what you ordered. At Green Door, we focus on trying to get the drinks out as soon as possible by pre-batching them. There are a lot of homemade ingredients anyways, and a lot of drinks have a lot of ingredients. So to get on a really busy night the same drink out every time as soon as possible, we just need to prepare them. Otherwise, if we take 8 bottles in our hands to prepare one drink, you will wait half an hour. So I think this is something we focus on.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think it does. When you wait too long for a drink, it does frustrates you as a customer, 100%. We used to have that problem at Candelaria too, depending on type of menus, type of cocktails, etc. Indeed, when you order a cocktail that is outside of your cocktail menu, it becomes a whole. So we have worked really hard on improving that. And the way we have achieved, honestly, really good timing on our cocktails, and we time them, is by changing the layout of our bar and our mise en place. Today, there's way more work in mise en place and pre-opening bar that actually that is so well thought that actually the service itself. Today, like the way we have organized our bar, at least at Candelaria, when we do 250, 300 cocktails with 4 people in total, so 2 in the floor and 2 bartending, it's to be able to achieve that in a 20-seat bar. Sorry, it's a very small place. Is quite high volume, and people don't wait. So you really have to think in a very smart way on how to design your back bar, how you design your menu, and if somebody wants somebody outside of the menu, what is the response you can give on a busy Friday night? Maybe, if I make this drink, it's going to take a little long. I can propose you something similar that is in my cocktail menu. If you're ready to wait, we can make you the drink. For example, it's also key. The service is so important in a cocktail bar to actually achieve a successful experience. In my team, nobody does one thing. Like the 7 bartenders also do flow. So there is definitely a knowledge and a communication there that is always constant.
Awesome, thank you.
Also, there's one drink, Ramos Fizz. Don't order it on a Friday night.
Whiskey sour, it's okay, but Ramos, no.
And of course, sometimes when we create bar menus, things don't turn out like we think. Like, for example, if you're having a very, very expensive drink, you put in a very expensive spirit, which is like a very complex experience, and you think people are going to order that less because it's more expensive, because it's more precious, and then you have some nights where suddenly people order that cocktail a lot of times because you will not pre-batch a very expensive cocktails, and then it will take a long time, and then the guests think it's pretentious. So like sometimes sometimes realize we are human beings, and we have 2 arms, and therefore sometimes things take a little bit more time. In that moment, it's important to be authentic and honest to the guest. Like last night, I forgot a guest was ordering a whiskey sour. I told the guest, sorry, I forgot. And the guests, they like it. They like it if you're honest, and they say, actually, I saw in your eyes you forgot. And in that moment, the situation was much more positive, as if I say, like, the bartender was too slow. You know what I mean? Was that a good answer?
I think that was a really good answer. And I think we've got another really good question coming up as well shortly in the front row.
Thank you for sharing so openly about what you guys do. And as a drinker, but I'm always on the other side of the bar, it must be so difficult to work in a bar day in, day out, every weekend. Like, how do you keep your team motivated? Like, I know in the food industry it's so difficult, especially after COVID, to keep people working and high quality as well. So how do you keep them motivated?
A very good question. Maria, do you want to start?
Personally, I think that working full-time in a bar is a very hard job. So one thing we do is that no one works more than 4 shifts a week. And I think that's just enough, because when you have 3 nights where you can meet friends, where you can have a private life, and you don't need to be in the bar every night. And I think for us it helps a lot that people are a little bit more fresh coming to the shift. And then we do some workshops together or some stuff outside the bar, so that everyone has a little bit also daytime. Maybe we go, I don't know, to a botanical garden. We want to do that maybe this or next week. We just do some stuff that is outside of the bar that can be educational, but that does not have to do with the night and alcohol every single day of the week.
100%. That's definitely 3 days off is a must when you work in the bar industry. I think today, if you want to keep a team healthy and strong and staying and growing in the bar industry. And the other thing I wanted to add, it was in the way we work, for example, where nobody does the same thing the whole week. Mechanical job also hurts your body really, really bad. Like bartending, really, you repeat the same movements. You're standing for long hours. You're carrying heavy boxes. There is a lot of physical work. So if you manage to don't do repetitive movements the whole week, it kind of creates a little break on your shifts and on the mechanical part of it. And also really pushing a daytime activity. The thing when you work at night is that you will barely see the daytime. You will wake up late. In winter time, for example, when it gets dark early, it gets like in your head is really hard. So trying to constantly help our teams to get a daytime like sport or a craft. We have done activities with a ceramist or things like that where they can see other things and actually have daytime for themselves. It's really important.
I think it's also very important to include some fun things that the staff can do at work and have the guest join it. So basically, if you're having fun while you're working and you have an environment where you can do a lot of jokes and you can, we have a panda sitting at the bar who's making the place. He has a tailor-made suit with a mariachi hat, so people know this place is not a normal place. And then we sit them at the table. There's also a small one. Markus has met Fred, our small baby panda, and we go to the guest and say, "Do you have experience with babysitting?" And they say yeah, why? And then can we put Fred to your table? And then the guest, basically you're making jokes, fun with the guest, and then that makes the whole evening. If you're constantly making jokes and fun in that way, the night is over very, very fast. And of course, the most important thing is sit down every now and then with the staff and talk about things. You can't change things. If you have problems, of course you can't change them. But I believe to find the biggest potential or the biggest wishes, desires of the staff is to sit down with the staff and not only sit down every half a year, but every now and then and listen. Same with the staff and the guest.
Mm. Thank you very much. Do we have any other audience questions? We do have time for one more question at least.
Okay, maybe mine. If there is somebody who would like to invite you for a cocktail, what would you order? What's your all-time favorite?
That's a good one.
It's a good one. For me, it changes. It changes. But right now, I'm in a jasmine moment. It's a classic that I love with gin, Campari, triple sec, and lemon juice. But it's it changes casually. The jasmine will be my trying to spring cocktail.
Maria, what's your signature drink at Green Door?
All of them, the whole menus.
But which one is the best one?
I don't know.
So basically, when I go to a bar and there's a signature drink or something which is very important at that night, because it's maybe right now it's the season, or very soon it's the season of lilac, and Maria has done a drink with lilac, and that's the special of the night. That's my favorite drink of the night.
But it is true. It is a really good point you're making, because I think the favorite changes with the season also. In winter, you will crave something different than in summer. That's why we change the menu a lot. But personally, when I go drinking, I love to drink and I love to stay late. But if I drink old fashions the whole night, I have to go home after the second one. So I really like lighter drinks, something like a bamboo cocktail, so something that actually has no spirits, but it's more like wine-based. This is something because I can have a lot of them and still feel fine the next day.
What would you recommend as a drink for someone coming to Berlin? What do you think is the drink that is most Berlin and kind of reflects what this city is all about?
Definitely try the signatures, because all bars I can think of have so many signatures. You will not find the same drink on a menu. Every bar has their own style and their own drinks. So you will have to pick a new one everywhere.
Mm-hmm. What would you recommend, Arnd?
Amen. Same.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a Berlin signature drink. It's a tough one. I think classics are done beautifully here, what is actually becoming a rare thing in other major cities. For example, in Paris itself, there's not that many bars and bartenders that know really well the classics and execute them at perfection. But there's a couple of places here that do that really, really well. And there's one that I find very special that is in Troy, because they have spirits that are from even another time. Like they have vintage bourbons and rye, gin, like amazing gin that is very old. And they can make classic cocktails with vintage bottles. And I find that super interesting and really cool, because there's not that many places you can get that. So a good Berlin drink could be like a classic with a rare product that nobody knows. It still exists.
Amazing. Thank you very much for joining us today. Maria, Carina, and Arnd, what a great discussion, and great to hear your thoughts about what's happening in the industry. And also thanks to our audience, obviously. Do follow Manifesto Market Berlin. Thank you very much for joining us this evening again, and have a great rest of the week.